Hello, I'm here in our classroom library with this wonderful author who I met here in Katy, Texas. Her name is Linda Kantor, and she has written 2 awesome books. I'm so excited to read and talk about with her.
And there they are.
So the first book is a meal story, just what we're talking about in class, a memoir. And then the other book is The Enigma Journal. So why did you decide to write this memoir?
Well, for years I've interviewed World War II vets, and I thought it was a good thing to do because just to preserve that slice of history. And I would interview somebody for an afternoon or a day, and I would write up their story in their hometown newspapers, or sometimes it became a magazine article. I've written those too. But since Emil was my own father-in-law, he became an entire book, because I had access to him for nearly 40 years.
True.
And he didn't want to talk at first. In the beginning of the book, in the introduction, I addressed that fact, trying to dig the facts out of him. And when he started talking, it's sort of like an avalanche, It started slow, and it's like all the stories that he had bottled up or forgot about for the last, basically by then, 50 years, came tumbling out, and they were very interesting.
Wow. And are they all in the story, or just a few of them?
All the ones that I saw fit to print. There was some things that were real personal that would only be what the family would want to know. It wouldn't appeal to a broader audience, so I just kept those out. Ooh. But it really wasn't all that much.
So a little editing and revising in there. I like it.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to write this book?
It was a long, long process. I probably started it, I think, in 1994. And I was doing a lot of World War II interviews at that time, and I started in on him. And he told me enough to make about 40 pages worth. And so I wrote that up for his 50th anniversary to his wife, who is also in the book. And I published that for the family. And then after people read that, they passed it around and discussed it, and they said, that's really good. Maybe you should write it for, the public at some point. I went back to it in 2011, last year. And I had a lot more resources than I did the first time. During the interview between 1994 and 10 years later, after when he had passed away, he was constantly adding to it, revising. Oh, this isn't exactly how it happened. Let me tell you something more. I heard all sorts of interesting stories that I had no idea. He had never talked about to anyone.
Wow.
So anyway, for 10 years he did this revision, and I was living in Texas, he was living in Oregon, and just back and forth between the two of us. So I had a good idea of what was there before I started the other book, and then he passed away. And then for 5 years, like I said, I wrote on that book, and I came back to it. And once I came back to it last year, it took 7 months. I had to fact check everything that he wrote, and there was a lot of errors, but I had more opportunities to do that because I had the internet, for one thing. And I discovered, actually, there was a book written by somebody in his bomb group, the history of the 460th bomb group. And that was not very interesting because it was just cut and dry, bomb such and such, 2 planes lost, came back at 0600 hours or something. There wasn't any emotion to it. There wasn't any flesh to it. It was just cut and dried. But then putting that together with the stories that Emil told me, it became a very interesting narrative.
What was your favorite part of the memoir that you wrote?
Let's see. Well, I guess just it was the process. How Emil opened up to me, how he told me things he had never told anybody ever, probably not even his wife. On the back of this book, there is me wearing, you probably can't see.
Oh, let me bring it up.
I am wearing Emil's bomber jacket, a wonderful bomber jacket with 41 painted bombs right on the chest, with an arrow that points right at the wearer's heart. I'm one of the few women in Katy with a real World War II bomber jacket. It's one of my prized possessions.
So what advice do you have for people that think they have a great idea for a story and they're ready to start putting it down on paper? How would you go about writing a story?
Well, first of all, this is what I discovered about 4 revisions into my first book. And I wish I had discovered it right away, because I was just poking around a bookstore on my own one day, and I came across this fantastic book on writing. It's written by Stephen King.
Really?
Really, and I do not read horror. And he wrote this book, and it's called On Writing. Let me see what it says. On Writing, a memoir of the craft.
Interesting.
And it's a small book. It's a cheap book. It has the best advice on how to write concisely, clearly, emotionally, stick to the subject, everything you want to know.
Wow.
And just read that over, do all your underlining and take it to heart and then start.